Hello and thank you for joining me today on The Political Conversationalist. My name is Ben Phipps and we're continuing our series of political philosophical topics and actually starting to come to a close on it. This is going to be the second to last video we have on this category. Kind of cut the list short, and we're going to have some big changes coming in the next couple weeks. However, today we're talking about democratic socialism and to a lesser extent communism. Back in 2016, something happened that Cold War America would have never tolerated. A major political candidate, Bernie Sanders, ran with the explicit stated intent to implement socialist policies on a national scale. And he almost won the nomination because, everybody was feeling the burn or whatever he wanted to say. And in my opinion, had he won the Democratic nomination, he would have done better against Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton did. Now, socialism and its pipe dream cousin communism have long been looked down on by Western societies. But especially after the Second World War, which started the Cold War, and Soviet Russia decided to spread Marxism across the entire world. But I think we need to get a few definitions before I really show you what I mean by the myth of democratic socialism and the pipe dream of communism. In Marxism, which is by far the dominant theory regarding socialism and communism, socialism is a stepping stone between capitalism and communism. And because it's a stepping stone, it's not supposed to be a permanent form of government. You see, in Marxist ideology, a communist country would be one with no government, no currency, no military, no private property. Now, what all that means is, if you need something, I give it to you. If I need something, you give it to me. And it sounds fantastic. It sounds like a big family. But in reality, people are pretty selfish people, and they like to take what's theirs and not give it away. So communism can never work on a large scale. And I have a video specifically on communism that details the largest scale I have ever seen it work on, which is a Jewish commune called a kibbutz, which is about 1,000 or less people, where they have a very similar style of government where everyone just kind of works together for the good of everyone else. But that's about as big as communism can get. So, I kind of cringe when people call Russia or China communist. And I know they do it with good intentions, or in my opinion, good intentions. They call these nations communist because communism is bad, and we're calling these nations bad by calling them communism. But really, you're diluting the word communism, because communism cannot and will not ever exist as an actual form of government. So therefore, the closest a society can get to communism is socialism. Now, socialism by definition is any type of government, which, again, I have a video on socialism, but it's any type of government, or specifically a system of economy in which the government owns the means of production and the goods produced and distributes them among the people. Now, that's very much like what goes on in North Korea and Cuba. The government owns the vast majority of businesses. They own the products of those businesses, and everything is redistributed to the people. And if you want to talk to some people from North Korea or Cuba, I suggest you do, to see how actual socialism works. Now, what is this democratic socialism Bernie Sanders keeps talking about? Well, democratic socialism really doesn't exist. And it's really something that is a deceptive term. Now, I don't know why they decide to use this term, because that's not actually what they're referencing. They reference the economies of places like Sweden and Denmark. But according to the Prime Minister of Denmark, Denmark is not a socialist country and never has been, and has always been a free market country, similar to what we have in America. Calling Denmark and Sweden a socialist country, or democratic socialism rather, is kind of like calling a Mazda Miata a sports car, or a high-performance sports car. It's not technically a lie, but it's more deceptive than it should be. And the reason is this: Denmark and Sweden both have free market economies. So they have a stock market, and businesses are free to operate as they please within legal restrictions. Now, the main difference between America, Sweden, and Denmark is tax. And this is what's always left out by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and people who like to push this democratic socialism is just how much money it takes to make this thing work. See, on average in America, people pay between 14 and 15% federal tax on average, and that's not counting Social Security and other things like that. Total out of your check, most people see about 25 to 30%, including state taxes, depending on where you live, depending on what you do, and how much money you make. Now, in Denmark, the average tax, federal tax, not counting provincial, city, I don't know if they have county taxes or anything like that, just the federal tax is 55.8%. I think that's why they call this democratic socialism instead of calling it the Nordic model of a free market. Because when you call it the Nordic model of a free market, you're encouraged to look into these Nordic models and see exactly how they do what they do. But when you call it democratic socialism and you invent this unicorn term in your mind, you can say whatever you want to say about it, and people can't research it because it doesn't exist. So, I think that's what he means by democratic socialism, is just that, you know, pay super high taxes and we'll take care of things. Now, I'm not looking down on the way Sweden and Denmark do business. People in Sweden and Denmark tend to be very happy. People in Sweden and Denmark enjoy the free education, free higher education. They enjoy the free healthcare, free. But what I think is different between the U.S. and Sweden and Denmark is that the average citizen in the U.S. doesn't trust the government very much. And the average citizen in the U.S. will always fight to lower taxes, not increase them. So, by calling it democratic socialism, he doesn't have to mention the massive tax hike that would have to take place for the Nordic model to work in America. Anyway, if you learned a little something about how communism doesn't exist, or at least doesn't exist on a national scale, on how democratic socialism is like calling a Mazda Miata a high-performance sports car, and about just how extremely ridiculously high taxes are in Denmark, and I hope you did learn something about those things. Leave a like or a comment. You can always subscribe. Go down in the description if you have a question, and go to my Facebook page. You can email me from there if you have a specific question, a long question, or you just want to berate me without end. Whatever you want to do. Thanks for watching.